8:09 p.m. I will, yeah, thank you. I ask all to stand if you're able to salute our flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll do roll call. Mr. Gito. Mr. McCrisky. Yes. Mr. Cavey.
Present.
Mr. Carl.
Here.
And I'm here as well. And we do have guests and Attorney William Hewitt, representative for the town, and we have our SMAC director, John Stoughton, and you can introduce your advisory group. Okay, this evening, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, good evening. Thank you for having us here. Also with me is Stephen Bates, treasurer, and our station manager, Anya Zielinski.
He got his.
So, I don't know if everybody's met Anya yet, but Anya is fairly new to today's station. She's doing a fantastic job, and excited to have her with us, and hopefully we're going to see some changes coming up. So.
Oh, great. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I've met Anna, but I have not met Mr. Bates. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And tonight, well, once she turns the AC off when we can hear one another. Thank you very much. Tonight we will discuss negotiations regarding the Comcast renewal agreement with the town of Stoughton. This agreement expired November 30th, 2019. In our discussions and review, we'll consider service to our community, we'll consider our revenue, we'll consider rates and other opportunities. So since Mr. McCrisky, did you want to start us off with a brief overview and then defer to our attorney, and then we'll move forward?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, but I don't think there's a need. I don't think I have any more information than any more. Just a couple conversations with Bill Hewig, the email trail that Mr. Stagnoni's been forwarding to us. So it just comes down to having there is definitely a difference of opinion. So I look forward to hearing from everybody to see what's in the town's best interest.
Well, thank you very much, Attorney Hewig. Please start us off.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good evening, members of the SMAC, members of the public. John, good to see you again. The license that is before you that I recommend is a product of negotiations that probably have gone on for 2 years. Just try to. Is that better? All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of SMAC, members of the public. The license that's before you that I've recommended is the product of probably 2 to 2.5 years of negotiations with Comcast. I don't recommend a license lightly, and I certainly never recommend a license either A, if I don't think that it is the best possible deal we can get for the town, or B, that it's not the best possible deal that the town needs and wants. I'm very conscious of the dire financial straits that cable access organizations all across the Commonwealth have been put into by events that have occurred over the last 10 to 20 years. The license that I have finally prepared and submitted to you would raise the gross annual revenues from 3.5% or 3.3% to 5%, and would increase capital from $230,000 to either $300,000 or alternatively to 72 cents per subscriber on an annualized basis. I negotiated with a Comcast representative named Kathy Maloney. I've known Kathy for probably 25 or 30 years, And I've been negotiating cable licenses myself since the early 90s, so that's probably about 30 years of experience too. During that time, I think I've negotiated over 150 to 200 licenses and probably 50 or 60 or 70 with Kathy. I also know Kathy's boss, Jerry Buckley, for about the same amount of time. So many times when I've been negotiating with Kathy, I've said, Kathy, can I go talk to Jerry? And she says, sure, go ahead. So I don't make the recommendations I make to you lightly tonight. I come to you persuaded that there is not a possibility of getting a better financial package for the town of Stoughton this time around. The 72 cents per subscriber is an amount of money that will, of course, change over time depending on whether subscribership goes up or down. And the trends recently have been down. And we all reasonably expect that that trend will continue. In some places it's slowing down, in some it's a straight line, and some it's not even declining at all, and some it's increasing. It's impossible to know exactly what the future holds. We don't have a crystal ball. We aren't able to say that there will be X number of subscribers 2 years, 5 years, 7 years down the line, and therefore your revenue will be X if we accept the per subscriber amount of capital. The alternative is the $300,000, which is a flat amount, and you would get that in $30,000 or $30,000 increments once a year for 10 years. The license that is before you, as I say, I do not. I've negotiated with Kathy for a long time on many other matters, and negotiated with her a long time on this, and I am not going to get any more money out of Comcast. I'm persuaded of that. One of the ways I can tell when negotiations are at an end and the other side is not going to budge anymore is when they start to offer alternatives. And that's what happened here. We were trying to get $400,000 or $380,000, $370,000 in capital. Comcast said, no, we'll give you $300,000, or we will give you an alternative, 72 cents per subscriber, which would provide a considerable more amount of capital, at least in the first few years. I can't tell you anything more about my firm belief that we're at the end of our negotiations with Comcast. If I could get John and SMAC $500,000 a year, I would. I would love to. But I firmly believe that we are not going to get anything more out of them. I've read John's email. I'm aware and conscious of some of his concerns and concerns expressed to me by members of the board. One of them was a request to have the access support capital funding front-end loaded so that SMAC can undertake a studio move if and when that's necessary. And I raised that with Kathy, and her answer was, SMAC is sitting on approximately $500,000 worth of a capital reserve now. So in the other situations where I've negotiated and tried to get money or capital for a municipality or an access corporation, and they have a large capital reserve like that, it is very difficult to get a cable company to agree to pay a lot of capital. Their answer is, you've already got a lot of capital you're sitting on, you've got a capital reserve, use that. Why should the subscribers pay more money through their monthly fees if you've got $500,000 you haven't spent? My answer to that was, they're doing the right thing by having a capital reserve, and her answer was, that's right, and it's the right thing for a studio move in the future. So you can see the difficulties that the prudence and the good financial management of SMAC have given us with respect either to getting more capital or also to getting it front-end loaded. The other concern I think was raised by John in his email message, talked about the Easton contract, and indeed the Easton did get more in 2019. That's an argument that is always a very difficult one to make, and I typically don't make it, and that is, Town X got this amount, therefore you should give the same to us. There's two reasons why that argument almost never works. The first is that cable negotiations are based on local need, a showing of local need. It's the duty and the obligation of the local access and the local municipality to present to Comcast what their future community cable-related needs are. And that's based on an entirely local analysis and a local ascertainment process that determines what is needed and wanted and reduces that to a demand that's placed to Comcast. Cable negotiations do not depend on matching what the neighboring town is. It's just not an argument that works or wins because it's not the way the cable statutes are written. The second problem is, of course, that what you get in your negotiations is very much dependent upon what you've already got. So a cable company is not going to go from 1% to 5%. They may go from 1% to 3% and from 3% to 5%. And they're not going to go from $100,000 to $800,000. They'll take it in steps over a sequence of different licenses over the course of the years. And what that means is that every town has its own cable funding history. And those histories may be very different. With specific respect to Easton, it may well be that they had a lot more capital in the prior license. And if they did, it was a lot easier for them to get even more. The number of subscribers may be different. Their cable access ascertainment and their community needs may have been different. I would love to be able to say, give us X amount in this town because the one next door got X amount. But it's not an argument that works, and it doesn't work because that's not the premise upon which cable negotiations are based. We have rules. We have rules for how we get money from how we make and construct our arguments to get money from the cable companies, and the rules are that we need to show our own needs. And reference to another town seldom, if ever, works or helps. I'm going to conclude my remarks here because with one final observation, and that is that it wouldn't come before you or before SMAC with a contract that I didn't think did two things. One was a good deal, and two was the best deal. I simply don't think we are going to be able to get anything better from Comcast, John. And I saw the suggestion of 5 years and $210,000, I think it was, and I did raise that with Kathy, but only briefly, because we don't want a 5-year license. Cable companies are getting stingier and stingier every year. You want a 10-year license because you want to nail in as much as you can get now for 10 years. If we come back in 5 years' time, we're going to find they're a lot less generous and less willing to give us capital, not more. But the other thing is, we will never get $210,000 over 5 years if we can't get $420,000 over 10 years. I mean, it's a simple case of math. So I appreciated that counteroffer, John. I'm afraid and sorry, it just was a non-starter. So with that, let me conclude my remarks by respectfully saying to the board, thank you for having this meeting and this hearing. I'd like to thank John and his hardworking folks at SMAC. I know they have worked very, very hard, not only to provide access to the town, but also in this, the ascertainment and in preparing a business plan and in participating in negotiations. I regret and I'm sorry that the end product is not pleasing to you. It's not really pleasing to me either, to tell you the truth. But the hard and cold facts and reality are that, in my opinion, from my experience, this is the best deal we're going to get this time around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Hewitt before we go to Mr. Stagno? Okay, while everything is fresh. Mr. Stagno.
Good evening. And again, thank you, Bill, because Bill's been doing a lot of work, and it has been like 2.5 years going through this. So I did, in part of my email to the select board, I included, what the outline of where we started out as in 2019. I also included what the SMAC budget was, which was, we were looking for revenues. Our needs are $2,247,000 plus dollars over the next 10 years. That includes $500,000 for relocation funds. I'm not sure if everybody on the board knows that the building that we are currently in has been purchased in the last year. It's currently getting a 30,000 square foot addition off the rear. It's going to become a tofu factory. SMAC and one other company are the only ones left in the 8 units. All other 6 units have been vacated, and it's being incorporated into the new addition as well. We're not sure how many years it'll be before, we have 3 years roughly left on our lease. We may not get another lease. We're not sure if the factory is going to be too noisy and interfere with the studio. So those are things we're waiting to see. And that's why we've been pushing hard to try to get more upfront money. When we built that studio some 12 to 13 years ago, it cost us $250,000 back then. So with the times and change and the cost of materials and everything, everybody knows, basically after seeing the fire station, the high school and everything, construction costs have gone up a lot, and that's how we came to the roughly $500,000, as well as everybody knows Steve is in the construction business, and he's helped us come up with these numbers. It's expensive to do a new studio. It's expensive to keep up the equipment. Everybody knows that when it comes to technology, it's changing on a yearly basis. We're lucky if anything we can keep is 5 years old. We're always switching things out. We actually are switching some new equipment out here at the town hall, which is now obsolete. We're working on other stuff that needs to be done at the studio. So our capital needs are great. So that's all included. And part of our 10-year plan was hopefully to expand the staffing. One of the things we're proud of here in Stoughton is we produce actually quite a few shows compared to other towns. We have a very busy studio. We have people coming from other towns who are being sponsored and using our studio and things like that. So for us, it's important. That's why our recommendation would be is not in support of the contract, because we think we need to hold the line and get some capital money up front. Yeah, we have $500,000 or a little bit more in the bank, but that would wipe us out if we have to move. And then we have no reserves left to run the business itself, to meet payroll and everything else. The other thing would be is, and I understand Bill's thing about not looking at another town, but the town of Easton, when they negotiated their contract, they had $1 million in the bank. And they were successful in doing a 6-year with a capital up front of $225,000, and the rest paid out over 5 more years. And as I mentioned in my email, the original contract that that's currently expired was paid out over 3 years to $230,000. Obviously, as I said in the email, we're very concerned about the prescriber piece, because if everybody else is getting any Comcast flyers, they don't offer conventional cable services anymore, which is what we would be getting our fees are based on. The only thing you can get is streaming boxes. And as they move to streaming, their customers to streaming, all that revenue leaves. The 5% revenue leaves, as well as the capital money at 72 cents per subscriber. Over the last 10 years, there's been about a 20% drop in subscribers in the town of Stoughton. And that even doesn't include, and how to calculate all the new construction we've had over those 10 years, the new apartments and stuff. So there's a drop. We also know that Verizon is looking to get out of the cable business, cable television business, over the next 3 to 5 years, it seems like, is what I'm being told from people in the industry. So likely those clients would end up going over to Comcast, which then would become streaming customers. We understand completely that, revenue is going to drop off and continue to drop off over time. We don't know if there's a drop-dead date. Comcast only knows if they have a plan to stop using cable boxes altogether and just start to go to streaming. It could be anywhere, from a couple of years to 5 years. So they're the only ones that know when they're going to pull the trigger on that. So that's why we're really concerned about not having the funds to move the space and have the money to, for capital improvements and other things like that. So we would like to see the board allow us to continue negotiations and keep going back at it, you know, at that point. Let's see. The other thing was, and as I mentioned in the email, was the $30,000 fee that just showed up. You know, Bill did mention that they might come up with a fee, but it just showed up in, you know, this round here. Other towns have been successful in negotiating that out. That equipment is needed for them to meet their obligations of giving us the HD channel and maybe some upgrading to their system, because their systems are really are old as well. The hub that's up here in the town hall, I don't think has been changed since they, you know, Comcast was actually running this stuff. So all that's going to need to be updated, and they want us to pay that, and they're going to want it in one lump sum, not over 10 years. So we don't feel that that's fair. And there was a reason for, so when Comcast would not agree to the lump sum money, that's when we came back, when we suggested it would be in the best interest of the town to offer them a 5-year license instead. We would take half of the $420,000 over the 5 years. There's a reason for that, and I don't know what happens afterwards, but it's not, besides the cable, this license gives them the right of way for their services to work, to be run on the telephone poles, which is the internet and the phone systems as well. And as we pointed out, the cable services, they are taking in revenue of $1.642 million, I believe it was, on a quarterly basis, generating $6.5 million on cable services from the town residents. Again, you know, with those numbers, we don't feel that what we were asking for was unreasonable. We did ask for retro money because it's taken so long to get that back. We are actually the retro money that's being offered us is a loss to us, as based on the revenue that's we've already lost to date, because saying it's coming up 3 years on this contract, the difference between the 3.3 and the 5% is 1.7%. That equals an extra almost $335,000 that we have lost in revenue while we were negotiating this contract. And it's not a fault of Bill's. Seems to be on Comcast's side in taking their time to get back to Bill and things like that. I think Joe can attest to the emails. I'm always following up. You know, I give Bill a couple of weeks and would follow up to see where we're at, and Bill then would have to go back to Comcast and kind of prod them. So we're getting pennies on the dollar, or probably about half or less than half of the $335,000 that we've lost during the negotiations. So we were willing to give that up, but we need the capital money up front. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, and why, you know, the differences we kind of have with that, as well as, you know, there was a few items that we had pointed out that were needed to be corrected. There's 3 SD channels with the, you know, in the cable system currently. The previous contract was for 2, but SMAC Board of Directors were able to get the 3rd channel, even though it wasn't included in the contract. We are getting 1 HD channel as well. And then we had asked to have the definition, and I think Bill said it was okay to put it in for HD, which was which we picked up out of the Easton contract. And then there was some language for consumer protection that we would wanted added, that we got out of the out of the Chelmsford contracts, which I think Bill said that wasn't a problem to add either, but I couldn't find it in there. So those are the things we, you know, would like to see added as well. But like I said, at this point, the way it's presented, we would hope the board would not move forward with an agreement at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Bates or Anna, do you have any other comments? We're going to go into questions.
My name is Anya Zolavnik, and I'm a venue station manager at the SMAC. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for inviting us. I think John really covered, you know, everything very well. Some of the things that I'd like to address that were mentioned, that we don't know if the number of subscribers are going to go down, you know, in 5-10 years. If you talk to anyone that works at any station, PEG access station, they will tell you that they all going down, and every town can see it. The only reason why some towns are getting the same amount is because Comcast or Verizon or other cable providers are changing monthly fees. So like, for example, in my town, we are getting the same amount of money, even though the number of subscribers is going down, and we can see it for the last 3-4 years. And the reason for it is that Comcast and Verizon are increasing monthly fees. But that's definitely going to happen. Just one more thing that I wanted to add is that, you know, moving the station from one location to the other is expensive, and it happens to a lot of towns. To one of the towns that I worked before, they had to move to a different location. The owner of the building can change, and that's very expensive to build the studio at the new location and, you know, get the new equipment. As John mentioned, you know, we are all technology-based, so we always have to look what's out there. For example, we're getting interns from Stoughton High School, so we want to make sure that we have, you know, the best equipment for them. So when those kids go to college and they start looking, you know, for jobs, that, you know, they had a really good, they were able to get a really good experience at the station. Right now we have 3 interns, and we are hoping to build it. So we will need money, you know, to keep updating our equipment to provide the best experience and education for kids in Stoughton who are interested in video or television production.
Thank you, Anna. And Mr. Bates.
How you doing? The part that bothers me the most is that if we're negotiating a contract, I don't know why we're doing it out here, but the reality is if Comcast is telling us that we have too much money in the bank and they're not going to give us what we're asking for, how do you, our point is that they're bringing in $6.4 million a year. We think that's too much money. So the amount of money that we have in the bank shouldn't even matter, shouldn't have even come up as part of the discussion. We all know in 5 years something's going to happen. So my point is why don't we wait the 5 years? Whatever we decide today is going to happen with Verizon, we're going to do this again with Verizon. And then they're going to say, well, you did it for Comcast, so you got to do it for us. So my point is that why don't we wait the 5 years? We're going to accept their deal, we're just going to take half of it. So if they offered the same money for 10 years, we'll take half of it for 5 years, and we'll see what the technology brings in 5 years. My other question would be, what if we say no? What if we say, no, we don't want your deal? Do we say, okay, pack up all your stuff and get out of town? I don't know. It just seems like they're the big guy. They're going to come in and tell us what to do. We've talked to many, many other towns. Upfront money has never been a problem with any of them. So I don't know, the negotiations haven't even lasted this long in other towns. 2.5 years is an awful long time. So
Mr. Bates, part of your comments to us was to wait a little bit longer and negotiate a little bit more with Comcast. But John's conversation, his comments was I use the word fighting for reimbursements because the contract is open-ended, there was a gap. So how do you reconcile that?
no, I'm not saying, John's saying that we should either negotiate more, which I'm open to talking about a 5-year plan, or just say, okay, we'll accept your deal, but half of it. And then in 5 years, we're going to figure out what the technology is doing. And if everybody switches to streaming, we're going to have no revenue because you don't need a cable box then. So
the revenue is, we have cable, but we believe a portion, we know a portion, we don't know how much and in what time period. People are going to convert from cable to streaming, and that streaming is like Wi-Fi use or what is it, Fire Stick, that's so popular now. So we don't know what the relationship or the percentage will be, but we know eventually it will convert over. So more would convert from cable to streaming.
Correct.
Right? So if we lock in now, built in the contract, we do have an exit strategy, right? So that's what I wanted to get to before I open it up to the board. We do have an exit strategy, and I guess I'll defer from you to our attorney, Hewitt. How does that work? If we have a 10-year contract, we start losing more subscribers, so that means our forecasted revenue will go down. We don't know how much, but built into this contract, there is an exit strategy. If something happens, we can get out of the contract. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, breaking a contract, and what is the stopgap?
I can, and there isn't an exit strategy. It's an agreement. A contract is an agreement. It's a contract. And if we, for example, were to terminate it in year 4, or if we were to say no to Comcast and say we're not going to renew your license, Comcast's remedy would be to take us to court. And under the Federal Cable Act, they could take us to federal court, or they could, under state law, they could take us before the state DTC. So let's take those two things separately. Let's start with saying no to this contract. Were the board to vote no, we will not renew the contract. Comcast would file a complaint with somebody, probably the DTC, or file a complaint in federal court. And the procedure that would have to be followed if they file a complaint in DTC would be for the board here to conduct a full administrative hearing. And that is a very long and complex process that involves interrogatories and document productions and subpoenas and testimonies. It converts the Board of Selectmen into a trial-like body, and you will be actually holding a trial here about why the license was denied or whether it should have been denied. If the board, following that hearing, upholds its earlier decision not to issue a license, then that decision is appealable into federal court. And I've been involved in one suit over 30 years. And I won't name the municipality, but when legal fees defending it got to be over $80,000 or $90,000, the municipality decided it just wasn't worth it. It is an unattractive alternative. The scales are weighed against municipalities. That's all there is to it. That's the way the Cable Act is written. So to answer your question, if you say no to the license, you could expect to have a complaint filed against you by Comcast in either the state administrative agency, the DTC, or federal court. And we don't have an escape clause in this license. The second question, well, that's actually the answer to both. There's no escape clause. So if you did try to terminate it, it would be breach of a contract, and you'd be sued for breach of contract. If you fail to renew license, that's not a breach of contract because the contract is over. But the cable company does have a presumptive right of renewal under Federal Cable Act. And they can sue, and they do and have sued in the past. They don't do it much anymore because municipalities do not have a stomach for paying $100,000 to defend a lawsuit for a cable license. I believe that answers your question, Madam Chair.
Yes, it does, Mr. Hewitt. Let me turn it to our fellow board members. Do you have any questions? Mr. Cavey, Vice Chair Cavey, I'm sorry.
I have a number of questions. I mean, so far, I've kind of taken this in. This is the first time I've really had to deal with one of these licenses. Taking it in and listening to all you folks. The person who I think I have the closest relationship and of just my natural opinion is actually Mr. Bates. I think everything you said, I'm on the same page with you. And given what you've just, Mr. Hewitt has just said, I'm also very confused why we're doing this in public. Sort of creating video evidence of all, of all of our opinions as we're trying to work through our position. So I'm not sure. I have some questions, but I do get concerned that at some point, if we do turn down this contract, that would become very much part of a court case. And I'm reticent to speak freely about it because for that reason. I don't think this belongs in a public session, to be honest.
Madam Chair?
Yes, because we did, Vice Chair Cavey, we did ask that question, so Attorney Hewitt, please address.
I couldn't agree with you more. We tried, when the open meeting law was being amended about 4 or 5 years ago, to get an exception for cable TV. The only contract negotiations for which it is legal to go into executive session are either collective bargaining agreements with labor or contracts to purchase real estate. That's the only contract that permits you under the open meeting law to go into executive session. We've lived under this burden for years and years and years. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's crazy, but it is the law. I will comfort you with this one thought. I don't think Comcast is watching. I've been doing this for years and years and years. Every once in a while I say to somebody, do you ever watch these hearings when we're talking about this? And the answer has always been no. Now, maybe they do and don't tell me the truth. I don't know.
I'm sure they don't. But if they decide to
Could.
file lawsuits, then I'm sure that a lot of people will be looking through these
Now,
meetings for anything they can get that would amplify their case.
I will make one clarifying point. There is another exception for going into executive session, and that is if litigation is imminent. And that means, is there a lawsuit about to happen? And if you were to say no to the license, then I could take you into executive session and we could discuss that. But again, that's the only possible exception.
Okay.
We have to discuss this in open meeting. I couldn't agree more with you. I think it's crazy, but
Well,
it's the
I
law.
appreciate you understand. I just want to make sure this wasn't like an oversight. I said to ask, that this does seem crazy, but if the law is the law. Okay, so I mean, then I'll dive right into it, and we'll have to show some courage and decide and for going to do.
Before we start, we could have a subcommittee dealing with this issue if we wanted to take another position on this.
We do.
Yeah, I mean, but they would still be
Mr. Bates
subject to open meeting
And
laws.
Mr. Stagnoni are our subcommittee. It was voted by
Yes.
the Board of Selectmen for that to be, so they are our subcommittee.
But we could add to that a couple of people on this board if we wanted to do that, could we not?
It would still be subject to open meeting law. I mean, you still have to have the meetings and.
I don't know, maybe
Know
I'm
what that
wrong.
would buy.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, maybe I am wrong, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to do this the way we're doing it. I was kind of surprised that we went from executive session to something else, and I now believe that I understand it, and I'm just looking for another way to
Yeah, remedy to this, but
remedy that problem. And if we can't, then I'll just stop talking.
Vice Chair Cavey, oh, I'm sorry, we have Vice Chair Cavey, Mr. Carrara, and Attorney Hewitt. Mr. Carrara, point of information.
I don't know how long ago we approved this. I was on the board, and I spoke to somebody, and they said, once they got the teeth in you, they're in you. And there's no way out because the federal law, as Attorney Hewitt says, it ties your hands. It's like a tower in the zoning world. When people come in for a tower, there's the federal law, communication law, that protects people. They can put a tower just about anywhere, anytime they want, if they can. So it's however you can fit the tower. Is the same thing as with this cable license. It's like the bait and the hook. And I just, it came to my head and I remembered it. And that's a long time ago when I negotiated the first one. And we did it just like this because we couldn't do it in there. And the attorney at that time says, no, you can't.
Thank you. Attorney Hewitt, you had a question?
I just wanted to address Mr. Gito's comment. If I understood you correctly, the suggestion was to add people to the committee so that it could comply with the open meeting law. Was that the purpose of adding members to the committee?
You had a subcommittee of this committee and a subcommittee of that committee. Perhaps you could have a different kind of conversation.
A committee of a committee or a subcommittee of a committee? It indeed might be a different conversation, but it would still require compliance with the open meeting law because that applies to all municipal bodies or subdivisions or sub-bodies or subcommittees, and anything that's a municipal body, whether it's a committee or subcommittee, must comply.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the ultimate decision would come back to this board anyway, where we'd all have to talk about it again, and we'd have the same problem.
And that's what I was just going to say. We'll
Yeah.
be in the same spot eventually.
That's right.
So,
Well,
So Vice Chair Cavey?
yeah, since that's the case, I'm just going to dive right in, and hopefully this does not resurrect it in some future lawsuit. But we'll have to just do what we have to do and ask the questions we have to ask. So it's going to be what it's going to be. So the first thing I'm really trying to understand, and I apologize, but this is not my area of expertise at all, so I'm going to have a lot of questions. I'm trying to understand sort of the directions of power here, who has authority over what, and everyone's role, right? So we have, from what I understand from this contract, the Comcast has to, negotiate a contract with us in order to have service in our town, provide service in our town. Now, the fact that they can, doesn't seem like we have a whole lot of choice about whether or not we can have a contract. Does confuse me because I would think that you can always choose to not enter into a contract with somebody, but it sounds like we don't have a choice but to enter a contract. If that's the case, that's fine. But does this operate differently than contracts, or is this like really a contract? Well, what exactly is this agreement if we have no choice but to have it?
That's a good question. It is a hybrid. It's something called a cable license under the Cable Act of 1984.
Okay.
You did have a choice. You had a choice back in 1986 or 87, whenever it was you issued your very first license, okay? It was issued to probably Continental Cable or AT&T Broadband, or Comcast has about 5 or 6 predecessors. Whoever came in and got the first license got their foot in the door and got here first. And it has a cable license, as I said earlier. It's kind of like a liquor license. It has something called a presumptive right of renewal. And that means that when the license is at a term, you got to negotiate in good faith, and you can't say no without a very, very good or legally sustainable reason, all right? An ordinary contract for waste removal services, you get to the end of the contract, you don't have to renew that. But this is different. It's not that kind of contract. I don't even like the term contract. It really is a license. It's a cable television license, and it's different from almost every other kind of agreement a municipality gets called upon to enter into. It's just different. It's a different animal.
That's helpful. I just want to know what we're actually looking at here. The I guess the next question I have is we've talked about subscribers to this, and since we're not actually, our job is not to get subscribers. We're just a municipality who's allowing infrastructure and whatnot. Why do we care about the number of subscribers in any way?
Well, there's 2 very important reasons. First of all, the number of subscribers will fund public access. So if you want public access, and everybody does, and you want a good product, and you're getting it here with John's organization and with SMAC, if you want that to continue, you're going to want subscribers to continue to be attracted to cable. The second reason you worry about subscribers is because the Cable Act says that a cable company may pass through to the subscribers the cost of any requirement of the license. So that means that the 5% is going to get passed through to subscribers on their bill. It means that whatever amount of capital, the 230 we had in the last license, the 300 or the whatever we get this time, that will also be passed through to subscribers. The more subscribers, the less the pass-through costs. The fewer subscribers, the more the pass-through costs, unless it is a per subscriber cost like the 72 cents being offered, okay? I'm very troubled about the fact that we can't get the upfront funding that they need. Comcast did that for years and years and years. They've stopped doing that now. And here's the reason why. I'm not an apologist for Comcast, but they do have a reason. If you get $300,000 over 10 years in a cable license, the cable company wants to divide it up into 10 equal payments, $30,000 a year, 10 years, $300,000, just for example, all right? When they do it that way, they do not pass through interest on that money to subscribers, okay? If they do it any other way, like provide more, and the reason they do that is because it's the lowest possible pass-through cost to subscribers, and that helps them too because, believe it or not, they don't like to raise their rates, although they do it all the time. But they do want to keep their rates low, particularly where they're in a market like Stoughton where there's competition. So if you were to get, for example, a $300,000 capital and $150,000 upfront in year one, they still amortize that out over 10 years. They spread it out over 10 years and they divide the capital equally over 10 years. But when they amortize it out of 1 year, they add interest to it, just like the bank, okay? It's like a mortgage. So the bottom line is, if we do get upfront money, and in the past we have, in some municipalities, they've been willing to do it, but they're not willing to do it anymore because they are now even more conscious than ever of keeping rates down and keeping the pass-through costs down, and that's why they won't agree to it. I could not get them. I'm conscious of the need. I know that I applaud John for having a capital reserve of $500,000. I mean, that's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, in the context of cable negotiations, it worked against us. And this is something that's only come up in the last couple years. 3 or 4 years ago, we might have been able to get it from Comcast. We can't do that anymore from either Comcast or Verizon. They just won't do it. The other thing that I wanted to point out to you is that Comcast, it does appear that they are trying to switch their subscribers over to streaming, but they can't switch them all over and end up having no cable license. If they have no cable license, they have to shut down. They have to leave town. They can't continue to market broadband streaming, which is what, they really do want to get more customers there. And that's different than Verizon. Verizon can shut down their cable license and stop providing cable service, and they will stay in town. And that's because they were here as a telecommunication company first. So they're not even a cable company, they were a telephone company. And they had poles and lines and pole permits and bought their poles beforehand, so they can stay here. And Comcast is at a real disadvantage when they are thinking about competing with Verizon, because Verizon can afford to say, hey, we're not going to give you anything for your renewal, and if you don't like it, we'll just go away, and we can continue to sell broadband. Comcast can't do that. And that's exactly what Verizon is doing all over the Commonwealth. They are playing hardball with the cable companies, knowing that Verizon can stay in town and market broadband, and the cable companies can't. So that's another one of the factors that's contributing to making cable companies really parsimonious, really stingy. They're just not as generous as they used to be. It's the times we live in.
Fair enough. The other question I have is so and I hope this doesn't come out wrong. I'm really just trying to understand the role of everything here. But so Comcast wants to set up they want their license renewed. I'm not sure the role that SMAC plays in this. Is it that they have to, as part of the license, they have to help fund or somehow, have some sort of involvement in SMAC, or is I'm trying to figure out, in Verizon, do they have to do the same thing? Like, what exactly, what's your relationship after the contract's done? Like, what's your relationship with these providers?
We have no relationship now. We have no relationship with them after the license is issued.
Okay.
We're here as an advisory to the Board of Selectmen during the negotiations. If I could, is just to talk on 2 points that Mr. Hewitt had brought up, is the pass-through cost that, from Comcast, which they try to keep down their, the cost. That's a choice of theirs. In the past, they haven't done the pass-through costs, as far as we know. And in talking to other people, we were told that that's a choice of theirs. They may use the language as they like to keep the rates down and things. Again, that's a choice of theirs, whether they do it or don't do it. Our understanding is they haven't done it in the past. Our perception or understanding, or even our belief of the prescriber is not about keeping the rates down and whatever. We believe it's because they know in less than 10 years they'll be going to streaming and they won't have to pay that money out. And that's the position we're taking, that we take. And we are suggesting, we're not saying to the board, suggesting to the board not to issue a license. We're suggesting don't accept this contract as written, and therefore send the message to Comcast, come out and do better. So we don't want the wrong message coming out across that we're looking and saying, don't issue them a license. We just don't like this agreement.
Yeah.
And we want the Board of Selectmen to, hopefully support that, suggestion as the advisory committee.
Thank you very much for helping me understand that. The regardless of what you may have in a bank, from this contract with Comcast, you were asking for some additional upfront money. What was the dollar amount for that? I've now forgotten. Sorry.
Yeah, so there was a spreadsheet that showed how much we would need over the 10 years, and like I said, it's $2,247,000 plus dollars. $500,000 of that was a relocation. 1.3 million is staffing and adding new positions and benefits and stuff like that. And then the rest of it was equipment and upgrades throughout the next 10 years, whether it's in studio or at locations throughout the town that we currently service, and expand technology in different meeting rooms that don't have cameras currently.
Okay, so the total was 2.247 million. 500,000 of that's relocation, and they're saying that you get zero, so like there's no 2.2 million.
Yeah, so they're saying it's included in the 1.7% difference, as well as over the 10 years, the capital payment that they're willing to pay us at the 72 cents per subscriber. Based on today's subscribers, comes to about $420,000. But like we've always said, those numbers are going to drop, and we see them dropping probably more significantly over the next few years. So we'll, the numbers we figure will not be, we won't receive anywhere close to the 420,000. And we need the money now, not down the road, so to speak. Even if the subscribers don't drop, we will likely need the money now to relocate in a couple of years when our lease is up.
So it's the 500,000 you need now, not the 2.2 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of that 2.2 million is the difference between the 3.3 and the 5% that we're going to get based on the payments or whatever, which is the operating, comes out of the operations and is not part of the capital.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to understand this for a number of reasons. Thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it. Not to overcomplicate things, but if we were to go back to negotiations and if we were to continue on, we'd have to come back with something other than what we currently have, right? Because that seems to be the standstill. But if we were able to bring something new to the negotiation, then that might actually allow us some opportunity to continue if that's something we want to do. And one of my questions, and this is like just off the top of my head, maybe it's a horrible idea, but just off the top of my head is what if those relocation costs were split between Comcast and the municipal government. We had a petitioned or an article or petitioned article to help fund the relocation for SMAC as part of. I don't know if this may all be completely illegal. I have no idea. But the question is, can we perhaps get some of it if we can't get all of it?
Well, I guess that would be up to the Board of Selectmen if they want to do an article at some time. Based on what I know as being a town meeting rep and things and where we've been doing other things, I just don't see asking the taxpayers to pay for the move, which at the end of the day, they're paying for it anyways through the cable subscribers. As on their bills, we all pay $2, $3 or whatever, depending on how expensive your television service is. It's on everybody's cable bills, whether you get Verizon or Comcast. So the thing is Comcast isn't flipping the bill for the whole thing, because we're going to hopefully get a similar deal with Verizon, and they're going to come up with some money or whatever. Not sure how the Verizon's going to work out, because as Bill, I don't know if he's mentioned to you guys, but they typically look at 5-year contracts now, because they're looking to get out of the business. But they still got to come up with some monetary monies or whatever.
Yeah, I understand. The work that SMAC does in particular is critical to our free and form of government, right? This is the reason why we're able to have these local meetings, is because SMAC's able to broadcast them to the public. And so it's not just that we're going to be footing the bill give the taxpayers the bill for moving it. I mean, this is just a function of our government, and I don't think that's on its face, ridiculous. I think there's at least a business case for saying that this is actually just part of how we have to keep our government open, and if we're not able to do it one way, then we have to do it another. But sorry, Mr. Hugh, you were about to say something, I think.
I just wanted to, I think you asked whether it's illegal or something like that. And the answer is yes, it is legal. Some municipalities do that. It's a policy decision. The arguments are, should taxpayers be supporting or subsidizing cable TV for non-cable TV subscribers? And the counter argument to that is it in the public good to have a viable and productive and ongoing good public access program in your community?
Yeah.
So it's a balancing argument. It's a policy decision. If the board wanted to put such an article on the warrant, they could certainly do so. Some communities do that. And I will say that when you look at the prospect of diminishing cable revenues over the next decade, that's an option. I mean, when I get asked by communities, by municipalities, by boards, what's our option? What are we going to do? That's my answer. That is an option. And it may not be palatable now to folks. Maybe in a year, 2 years, 3 years, perhaps it will. It's a sales job. But
yeah.
That's, our other hope was that the state legislature was going to pass a bill, and that apparently is not going to happen. So we're looking at a diminishing array of possible remedies and options to keep cable access viable in all communities. And that's one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if something that would I haven't asked anybody else on this board. Obviously, I literally just thought of it. But if it made it through this board, it still have to go through town meeting, and they may decide no. But I think giving them the opportunity to make that decision, I don't see a problem with that at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Please go ahead.
As Attorney Hewitt just mentioned, is the and I included it in your packets there in part of my email this morning. House Bill number 130 addresses streaming. I met and had a conversation with Representative Galvin recently. He's following up with that. If Bill has information that we haven't heard from the representative, it seems to still be moving forward, but has not been passed yet, and it's been in the works at least probably 3 years. It seems like about 3 years, I believe, Bill, right? Yeah, it's been in the works for a while, but it does have a house number, and like I said, you have a copy of it. And just to get into the quick highlights of that, it's they want the state is looking to address streaming revenues. So they were gonna put a 5% surcharge on all streaming services, is the way I read it, which would include your YouTubes and your Hulus and all these others. As long as the revenue exceeded $250,000, then they would go to a pool of money, it would be at 5%. The state would take 1%, the town gets 2%, and PEG Access would get 2%. But as you can see in this contract, you know, in what we've been dealing with for the last 10 years, the agreement, or actually 12 years now, or 13 years, as we go along with this one, we were only getting 3.3%, which has been flat for 10 years. So our operating budget, we don't have a way of raising rates and things. We've been working with the same number ever since the contract's been in play. So that's the other reason why, you know, you gotta save and can't spend all your money. You gotta hedge for those 10 years where you can't raise your rates and stuff. You know, so one of the other things we see happening if streaming comes in and kicks in, and we've already talked about it as a group, is regionalization of some of the studios. So that's on our list. You know, we've been talking about it. And the other thing would, you know, and we've emailed the board to let you know that if there's no use for the Armory, we might be interested in taking a look at that as a potential space. If there's a building where we can renovate and do a service to help the town as well as help us, and then we don't have a rent, that could save us roughly $45,000 in rental fees right now that we're currently paying to a landlord. So those are things we're discussing as a group, and, you know, hedging on and whatever. And again, it's cooperation with everybody, and again, trying to find space outside. There really is no available space right now. When you look around town, everything is rented, which is a good thing, but it's not a good thing if you're looking for space within the town. It took us a while to find the space we're currently in.
Thank you so very much. As the conversation has been going back and forth, I'm still at the point of the front loading, because Attorney Hewitt's message came clear that they aren't doing that. Comcast is just not doing it. So what message would you give if we delay the contract, if we say yes, and you still want the front end loading? What would you say to Comcast to convince them otherwise?
Well, I think a vote of this board turning it down sends them a pretty clear message. Get back to the table and let's get this done. Other than sending them the message, you know, they're not going to budge or whatever. You know, I did have a conversation with the attorney who dealt with Easton. He seems to still be having some success, but he does understand that Comcast is trying to head over to the subscribers and things like that. You know, I guess if we can't do it as a group here, maybe we gotta look to engage that attorney, which is Attorney William Solomon, which Bill, I guess, knows and has done worked with in the past. But he feels that, you know, we can do a little bit better. So, but I think a vote of the board sends the message clearly to Comcast that you don't agree with what they're offering, and whether it includes a vote to, you know, support what we're recommending. Originally was over the 6 years is, you know, $225,000 up front and $29,000 a year over the next 5 years, which I believe came to $370,000, which is $50,000 reductions to the subscribers, but we get it paid over 6 years, because the offer is 72 cents, and like I said, that's $420,000 currently. That's something we can live with, and having the $225 up front, and then if Verizon comes up with the others, we're getting closer to that monies or that we have. And we came up with the $29,000 versus the $15,000. That's to adjust for the retro, because the contract's taken so long on Comcast's part to get to this point.
And one more question: how much would You probably said it before, the retro amount, because the contract is still open. What is the value of that?
Well, the full value at 3 years is almost $335,000, but we're not getting anywhere close to that. Essentially, it's worked out to be about 14 cents per subscriber over time. So I'm trying to remember what the actual number was. So again, Comcast was offering us $300,000, and then the retro added like $70,000, and that's how we got to the 370. So it's the 225 and 29,000 a year for the next 5 years, if I have my numbers, remember my numbers correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Carrero, Mr. McCrisky.
Thank you. Just one quick question, and then I'm going to ask, because you're telling us something that you want, why you want it, how you're going to get it. Well, I haven't heard the how you're going to get it, but, and then I've got Bill Hewig, who's been well experienced, 30 years, dealt with this gentleman a couple times now, and he seems to really be on with Comcast, how they work. So, Easton, you've mentioned them several times. Who is bargaining their contract? Is it the town themselves, or is it the access provider?
I don't know if they had an advisory committee. Their contract's been done. Their contract expired at the same time, or around the same time as ours in 2019, and theirs has been done, was finished in 2019. And as I said, they had $1 million in the bank at the time and got $300,000 paid out over 6 years.
Okay, do you know their finances as well as you know your own?
I know of the money that they had in the bank, as I talked to the previous executive director,
Okay.
when
Taking-
Comcast brought this up, that we had $500,000.
Okay, so taking the money out of the bank, out of the equation, do you know their finances the way you know your own?
No, all I know is that they had a contract of 4%, and they went to 5% like we're doing.
Okay,
And they got the $300,000, as I mentioned, and $225,000 in a lump sum.
So on the sides of communities, the contracts are bargained differently, and we're a much bigger town than Easton with subscribers, correct?
We should, I believe we have more subscribers, but I don't know for a fact.
Okay, well, higher population by, more than a few thousand, I would imagine we do. What's going to help me more than anything is having these gentlemen talk amongst themselves. It's obvious Mr. Hewig is saying, we've got the best we're going to get. And we basically have SMAC sitting in front of us saying, hire another attorney. That was just said. So, I mean, I'm at a loss here. I'm at a loss here. I'm more inclined to be going with Mr. Hewig because he does this all the time. This isn't something he just does every 10 years in Stoughton. And I would imagine, you say thousands of contracts you've done? How would you say, how many
No,
contracts?
probably 150 to 200 over 30
150,
years.
200? Okay.
Yeah.
That's 150, 200 more than I've done, so it's difficult. And I don't think there's anybody here that would say it's not, especially when you have SMAC that's up there running the place every day. They know what they're looking for money. We know Mr. Hewig. I've talked with Kathy Maloney at Comcast many times before. And the one time that I talked to her through the whole process, the issue did come up that Comcast wasn't crazy about negotiating with the access provider. So I don't know if that had something to do with anything, if it hurts our bargaining position, I don't know. But we could sit here and talk all night. You folks or you are walking away tonight, if we take a vote right now, not happy. It's not right for the residents of the town. We can't be digging in on either side. So what do we do that's in the best interest of the ratepayers? I don't say the taxpayers, because not every taxpayer is a ratepayer of Comcast, so they don't pay for that. So where do we go from here? I think I'd much rather have you asking Bill questions as to why you feel you can't get it, and then you letting them know what you've been dealing with. I would imagine you've been on the same conference calls, correct?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot through email. We did have Bill joined us for a meeting when we needed him to do it through Zoom. So we have been discussing it. And again, it's just he thinks he's got the best, and we feel that we can do better.
Based on what?
Based on the Easton contract and the conversation I had with the attorney that,
So one attorney you're willing to say is better than our attorney, based on what?
based on the conversation I had, I'm not saying he's better than Bill, I'm just saying.
Well, you basically said we should go with that attorney, John. You said that.
Yeah.
So, I
But,
mean,
you know, they both have been doing it a long time. This attorney does multiple towns as well. He's been doing it for 30 years. You know, he's been around for a long time, and as I said, Bill knows him. But he's been successful in doing things that we haven't been able to get here in Stoughton, and if that's the case.
so with those issues, why wouldn't you ask Mr. Hewig, why can't we get this? Why can't we get this? And I'd like to hear his response.
And that's what we did, you know, and that's why we got to the point where if we're not getting the money down, we offered the 5. We still believe that, you know, a 5-year deal, if we're not getting the money up front, is the best interest of the town, because that's when we'll know if the streaming how much it's impacted. And like I said, they have and as Bill has indicated, Verizon has already been here because they were in the phone business. Comcast hasn't. As soon as this thing goes to streaming, they need that license to keep their stuff up on the poles here. So I think that we should have more leverage than they have. And like I said, the revenue that they're taking in is a lot of money, and this is not a lot to them compared to it. And everything that they want to say that they want to pass throughs and all this other stuff is their choice, but they haven't done it in the past. And they just say that to make it sound like, you know, you're going to hurt the subscribers, you know. So it's all, you know, and then like I said, you know, they're changing the terms of the existing contract to a per subscriber instead of the capital. They've been making all the demands. They've gotten everything they've wanted. We're not getting what we want, is what we're saying. So the board of directors, we just had a board meeting, you know, and we don't have a problem with Bill if that's what the board wants to do. But you know, like I said, if the board votes and says we're not going to accept this contract the way it's written, and we send Bill back, then he can talk to Comcast, and we can talk about, you know, what do we do next as far as that goes. Or if the board is inclined to try the Easton attorney, the board of directors has authorized us to pay for that attorney going forward during the negotiations to finalize a contract. So SMAC would pick up the bill for the attorney fees going forward if that was the way they wanted to go.
And based on what? If you were going to go, what? Because you don't know, you're only going by another attorney's word that he can do better for you. No disrespect, attorney's going to say that.
And
No
again,
disrespect,
you know,
I can do better for you.
and all I can say is I just look at what he's done and what he's saying, and that's all I got to, you know. So it's his past record is he seems to be doing a little bit better for the communities he's representing.
How many communities does he represent?
I didn't ask him how many he does.
Okay,
but
so you
he's
don't
do-
know
he's
that
doing-
then.
He's doing, you know, he's doing plenty of cable licenses, and he's
So
dealing with the Verizons, and he's well aware of, you know, and rehearsed in all the things that's going on with Verizon, wanting to cut out early and things like that, so. Like I said,
Is that anything that Mr. Hewig doesn't know?
again, the conversation I had, he seemed to be very confident that he could do something different.
Okay, so it's not, okay, I'm going to go off
So,
that then, because
and
we're
again,
not talking apples to apples here. You know, you're talking with a guy who says he can do it, don't have anything to back it up,
Except for his past record.
his past record.
Yeah,
And
of
I would
times.
argue that, you know, Mr. Hewig has had a past record here as well.
Yeah.
And it's been a good one. So, you know, I guess, Mr. Hewig, and again, because I'm just trying to really kind of get to where we are in here. And, you know, we want to, you know, you've been here for years, we've gone through contracts before. You know, when I heard the part, and I didn't know, and I asked you if it was an issue where the access provider, where I believe they said it was the only time they've bargained a contract with the access provider versus the town directly. Is that true? Is that a normal thing, or is this the first time that you know it's ever happened? Do you think that was that backing them into the corner that they might not want to do something for some reason?
I don't think so, Mr. McCrisky. They weren't bargaining with the access provider. They were bargaining with me, and I had John on some of the negotiations. And that's something I do a lot of. where I have an access provider and they've provided the budget and the numbers, I like to have them present during the negotiations to be able to answer the nuts and bolts questions about either technical details or about the nickels and dimes in the budget and so on. I can't answer questions the way John can about the budget, about the equipment needs, or about their technical hookups. So, but I don't know why Kathy said that. She was not bargaining with John. I don't think John would tell you that. She was bargaining with me, and John and I were on the same team.
Yeah.
And
again,
that's fairly
just-
typical.
And I'm the one, really, I guess the board should have had somebody involved, you know, but again, when it was just a change in the board recently, you know, and I sat here and said the same thing. John, go ahead, have at it. But again, now we're at a stalemate between, you know, our negotiators here, our subcommittee, and what you say we can get. So why do you, if you could elaborate a little bit on the issues as to why you feel that they've dug in now and said this is it? Is there anything we can go back with? Is there anything that, that we can take from Mr. Stagnoni's comments tonight that you haven't heard before, possibly? Is there anything we go back to? Because I don't understand the process of why do they care how many times you move? If you moved every 2 years, they're not going to give you money every 2 years. So I don't understand how they can say they won't contribute to that. I can understand if they're saying you got money in the bank, use the money in the bank. I can understand that. I don't know how often they let other people get away with it. But again, you know, and that's in the event that you are moving. I mean, you haven't been told anything. You said you'd be there for another 3 years. Is that what your lease is, another 3 years?
Our lease is good for another 2.5 to 3 years.
2.5, and what was your previous lease?
We had a 10-year, and then we extended it for 5 more.
Okay.
So we've been there like 12 or 13, I think 12 years now, because we did 1 year in the town of Easton, while we were searching out a site.
And the landlord has indicated he's not renewing it? Is there any documents?
No, there's two factors. One is, we don't know what the factory and the process, what's gonna happen over there, and how much noise is gonna be, how many trucks are coming in and out during the course of the day. So we don't know what's gonna be happening, you know, with the building. They also will be expanding, so they may need our space in time, whether it's within 3 years, we don't know. It could be in 5 years or so, but, you know, we're not ready to ask them for an extension until we know when the factory's up and running and see what it's like. So,
Right, so that's what I'm still having a problem with, is that I don't know how often Comcast gives money that's being used to move a studio. And again, why would they care? You know, you've got a building now. They're giving you the money to provide the services. If you have to move, are they, and Bill, jump in if you can offer anything, are they taking the position, and I don't know, are they taking the position of, hey, listen, we're going to give you what you need to run the studio. Where it goes is up to you. Because if they're doing this, how many other people have they invested money in to move several times? Is that normal? Or is that something that we're asking that other towns don't ask?
yeah, and I can't speak for other towns, but when we put together the 10-year forecast, we built in the move because we figured we're gonna end up having to move. So as far as Comcast goes, whether they do it on a regular basis or not, it's a need we have, and that's what we're here to present, is what we need. And that's what, you know, so that's what's in the ask. So, because it's broken down, operations is the 5% for the PEGS access, and then the capital upfront money could be used for the relocation and some equipment or whatever. So in this case, if we only get $420,000 over the life of the 10 years, which we don't think we'd ever see, we don't have the money to make a move at $500,000. Like I said, if we wipe out our bank account, we can't operate. How are we going to meet payroll? How are we going to pay all our bills?
Well, how would they wipe out your bank account?
Because if it costs us roughly $500,000 to move and do a build-out, we would spend all the money or almost all the money we have in the bank.
Okay, but you have revenue coming in to run SMAC in addition to what you have in that bank account. So why would they be wiping out your ability to pay people? If you've already got the money in the bank and you're operating, using that to move.
Because we get paid quarterly, or we get paid monthly from the town through the enterprise account now, but the town gets paid on quarterly or whatever. So there may be enough money, but it's going to be cutting it really close to doing it, nobody runs their business week-by-week paychecks. So, and again, we don't want to be sitting here negotiating against ourselves, but we need the capital money separate from the operating money to make, to do the
But again,
improvements we need.
capital, you're saying the capital's in the move. So where's the
It's part of
capital?
part of it's the move and part of it's equipment.
Okay, so how much of each?
It's in the spreadsheet I supplied you. Let's see, equipment total was $356,000, and then the move was $500,000 with an which is an estimate. It depends on where you go and things like that. So, and again, this is not Comcast looking to do this. Whatever we get from Verizon, they would be paying towards part of it or whatever as well.
If I can, Madam Chair, and I am going to yield to Mr. Gito a minute because he was just trying to make a point to my comment, and I think it may help me, but I couldn't hear him. Mr. Gito?
But I think Mr. Carrara had a point.
Well, I still have a question. I just wanted to ask Mr.
Mr.
Gito to
Gito?
make the point if he could, because I think he was,
Mr.
your microphone.
Just looking or listening to the information from earlier on, I thought that the equipment was somewhere around $450,000. That's what I thought.
Okay. And that's
But
what
it might
John-
be a little bit less than that or a little bit more. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, and I was going to ask Bill on this and just my thought process, because again, we could sit here and talk all night. It's obvious that, we're not going to have an agreement on the facts between our council and Mr. Stagnoni and his folks. So I'm not going to be ready to make a vote tonight either way, but I don't know what the alternative is here. So, Bill, if you could just interject a little bit and...
Certainly, Mr. Pokruski. I was going to answer your question about whether Comcast, about two things, whether they fund 2 or 3 moves during the term of a license. The answer is no, they never have. I will say that there was a time when they did give upfront money if you demonstrated a need for a new studio and it was well along and you could show plans and all that sort of thing. They did used to do that. And I negotiated many of those licenses myself 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago. The Easton contract, or the Easton license, was 2019. Comcast did it in 2019. They did it there. But I have not seen them do that in the last several years. And I've asked, not just here, but elsewhere. And Comcast, to my knowledge, is not going to give upfront money. I know Bill Solomon well. He's a good lawyer. We have different styles. I mean, he can get things from Comcast. I can get things from Comcast. I don't think he's going to get your upfront money here. I don't think Comcast will give it. And believe me, I tried, because I know how important that was to John. But I will also say that Comcast has often taken the position that if you've got a big reserve fund, you ought to spend that first before we start raising subscriber rates and passing through additional cost to subscribers. That's a position I've known them to take for years. And I've told them exactly what I said here tonight. You're punishing them for doing a good job and thinking of the rainy day. And their answer to that is, we have to think about our subscribers. We're in business to make money, and when we raise rates and pass through higher costs to subscribers, we lose subscribers and we lose money. So there you are. Those are the two sides to the story, but I do not think you're going to get upfront money out of Comcast, and I've tried.
What is the actual increase to the ratepayers? Has that been defined by Comcast?
Well, it would be a calculation you'd make. So, for example, if you go from 3.5 to 3.3% to 5%, if you assume a $100 cable bill, that's going to be another $1.70 per subscriber per month to go from 3.3 to 5%. The Comcast has offered 72 cents per subscriber for capital. So it would be an additional 72 cents if we took that. If you take the $300,000 as a flat rate instead, it's going to come out to something like 45 or 50 cents per subscriber. So that's a lesser amount. So those are the calculuses. It'd be $1.70 for the hike from 3.3% to 5%, and either 40, 50, or 72 cents per subscriber for the capital. Now, you know, Comcast will say, well, we got to look out for the subscribers. And I say to Comcast, you also have to look out for public access, excuse me, because you're in partnership with public access and the municipality, and, you know, we want this partnership to work. So there is a balance between how much additional fees are going to be acceptable and how much are not. And, you know, if you go up to another $2.50 or $3 per month, adding that to subscribers' fees, you're going to start to hear complaints from subscribers, and Comcast will lose subscribers. So we're kind of at that area right now with what the contract that's been offered.
But with that as well, this wasn't the town's decision to do this on our own. This was SMAC saying they're no longer going to be utilizing their studios, and they cut the cord on the studios and said it was going to be more beneficial for them to just pay it forward through to the communities. So could we assume that what they're trying to do now is tighten up to hang on to their own profit versus kind of reneging on their word to set up the municipalities to be able to do this, you know, in accordance with what's needed? So, you know, they're tightening up the purse strings on us, but because they don't want to lose any on their end. Is there any truth to that?
I think that you're talking about Comcast.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there absolutely is, yes.
Okay, so why wouldn't we dig in and say we're going to hold out for more? What's the benefit or the downside to that?
Well, first of all, the downside is the loss of time, because if we don't get a renewal license now and we don't get one for another 6 months, they're out that 6 months additional money. The other downside, I think, is my sense is, Joe, that we are just not going to get any more money out of them. There may be other things. John mentioned a couple things that I had said, yes, we can get those in the license. One of them was a definition of high def, which we can get, and it wasn't in this draft. And the other one was some other technical or customer service or consumer protection, which we can get and put in there. So this is offered as a semi-final draft, but there will be a couple more changes. But my sense is that that Comcast is digging in its heels. They're not going to pay us anymore. We're at the end of what we're going to get out of them money-wise, and it's completely consistent with my experience of Comcast in the last 2 or 3 years. They get to a point where they just say, no, we're not going to spend any more. We're more worried about our subscribers and our income and losing subscribers than we are about your local access program.
In your experience, knowing that and knowing what we know as well, is there any way of any kind of agreement throwing that argument back in their face and saying, listen, this was your idea, not ours, you know, to go out here and taking that? And I don't know what you've said to them and how you've argued it. I don't need to know. It's like hot dogs. I like them. I don't want to see how they're made, though. But it's, in your experience, you know, I know you say of getting up front, but are you basing that upfront figure on what has been proposed? Or is there something else that we can get by just changing the message? Even if, you know, for equipment, I mean, we know in this hall, there's still audio issues. I still don't know where the hell they come from, but we had it just at our last meeting, you know, that for whatever reason. So we know the equipment needs to be updated. You know, I know going through 5 years of minutes of SMAC's operation, I know that they have worked, by reading those minutes, I know they have worked diligently to get that done on this end for what they can do. So I don't know, I would imagine it's going to be some equipment issues that we would need through SMAC, am I correct? For that, some of that issue?
Yes, so some of the issues is outdated equipment. There's software, you know, it's like anything else, technology works great when it's working, but when somebody pushes a software update or whatever, sometimes it creates problems, and we don't find about it until we go online or whatever. So those are some of the issues that we have, and like I said, some of the stuff is just getting outdated and isn't supported anymore. So we're working through that in all the locations, and that's part of our 10-year plan to update equipment as well as try to expand the services we currently offer. And just to say, you know, Joe, you were on the exact right track when you presented the question back. Is Comcast is fighting and saying, we don't want to give you this because we want to protect the subscribers, and, you know, we're going to lose subscribers. And we're saying the exact same thing. We're going to lose subscribers, and we know that we'll never see at the end of 10 years. Our gut tell us, all the statistics are showing that everything's dropping off and going to streaming, that we'll never see the 10 years out, the 72 cents. You know, it won't give us the value of the 420,000 that's there. And so at the end of the day, we're all talking about the same thing. It's just about how getting it in a shorter period of time, and so we make sure we get it. And as, you know, like using Easton again, they may not be moving, they're not going anywhere, and they still got $300,000. And we're looking for something, you know, something similar, and then the retro. And that's it in a nutshell, is, you know, we're trying to protect what we need for capital improvements, the potential for the move, and it's trying to protect what we're doing. It's in hedging against the Comcast of the world. So we're going to go to streaming, and we're going to lose our revenue, and then we got to figure out how we're going to survive this organization and keep providing the services we do.
Well, sooner or later, the legislature is going to have to get involved. I mean, but I can understand, and again, I just go back, you mentioned Easton more than you've said the word Stoughton in here in this conversation. And you don't know, and I think to say to what I take from Bill's comment is that we don't know what Easton got years back, unless you know their whole financial history of their contract. So they might have got things on the other end that we didn't know about, but we got things that they didn't get. So, I mean, I can't sit here and say, let's go with the Easton guy because John talked to him and Easton's getting more. It just, there's nothing to back that up.
99% of this license is boilerplate. The only thing we're talking about is the percentage. We've all agreed that we're going to go to 5%. So the only thing we're talking about now is capital money. And that's the only thing.
Okay.
Those are the two real sticking points in the license. And like I said, the 5% is all the towns are getting the 5% now. Like I said, Easton went from 4% to 5%, and they got $300,000, and they got the lump sum up front. And I only use Easton, one is they're right next door, and two is that they are similar, you know, pretty similar in size almost, or whatever, you know. So, but like I said, I think Stoughton has one of the best places around, and that's why we have people coming here. And do more shows than most of the surrounding towns. So, and we are fighting to keep that providing that service to our residents. I agree.
It's just it's different here. It's a different situation, and as you know, I've gone through a couple of these myself. You know, and this is the first time we've been in this position.
Yeah. So, you know, and again, we are as an advisory committee, and when we ask Bill and suggest certain things to him, maybe Kathy and them aren't taking it as seriously because we are only the advisory committee, but I think a message from this board may send a different message. I can't guarantee that, but I think it's going to send a different message if the board says, look, we support the advisory committee, and just send Bill back and say, look, they're not going to renew the license unless we get certain, some money up front to cover the capital costs.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to
Bill was going to answer my question.
I just wanted to add the following observation. As I said, I have negotiated licenses in the past with the upfront money or the funding staggered in year 3, 5, and 7 or something like that. Those were fairly commonplace for a long period of time. But things have changed in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that part of it is the fact that cable companies are all losing subscribers. I also think that the competition is there, and that competition is getting very difficult for cable companies, and they are tightening their belt. We're not negotiating with the same cable companies and the same executives and the same prerogatives that we were 2 or 3 years ago. The licenses that I've been able to get from Comcast are not as good as they would have been 3 or 4 years ago. That's the bottom line. It's not just Stoughton, it's everywhere. And it's not so much the amount of the capital. I understand John needs the upfront money, but I haven't seen a Comcast license with upfront money myself in 2 or 3 years. I know Easton got it in 2019, then is then, and now is now. It's just not the same anymore. That's my perception, and that's been my experience. And if I could have got it for you, John, I would have. But as I said, there were 2 things that Comcast told me. One was, that's going to result in a larger pass-through cost to subscribers because it's going to have interest tacked onto it. And two, you've got $500,000 in the bank. And I don't like that argument because I think that's punishing John for doing the right thing. But that's a financial argument, and we're talking financial terms, and finances are what this is all about. So that's what we're up against.
Yeah,
think Bill,
I know, Mr. Bates, you have the floor, and then I want to allow Mr. Quara to make a comment as well.
I think Bill just hit the nail on the head that there has to be a reason why they're stretching this out for 10 years, because they're losing subscribers, and when they lose subscribers, well, our income's gonna go down. They're not gonna be around in 10 years to fulfill the end of the deal. So, and the other thing is when was the last time you negotiated for a car or a house and they asked you how much money you had in the bank? I mean, that's not part of a negotiation, you know? I don't see what the problem is. Or how about an independent arbitrator? Can we get an arbitrator? I think that if our council's telling us we're at the end of the road, then we don't believe we're at the end of the road. You know, what's our options for an independent arbitrator? You know, every contract has an arbitrator. So my thing is that if there has to be a reason why they're what's Comcast calling themselves now? Peacock? So in 5 years, there's gonna be no Comcast. It's gonna be Peacock. And then what do? Say, oh, well, Comcast isn't around. We don't get our money.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's you know, Comcast is the one that's dragged this out. So if we had gotten a contract sooner, you know, early 2020, then this would not be an issue. I think the whole topic would be different. Getting the money up front would have been, you know, probably done. As Bill said, it's only been in the last couple of years. So their inaction is penalizing, and they're trying to penalize us. So I just don't see how this puts us all on the level playing field and gets us what we want. So
I wanted to allow my fellow board members some time to address some things. Mr. Carrara. Right, well.
Mr. Hewitt, let me understand this. This contract, like you said, is a hybrid contract. It doesn't follow the parameters of normal contracts like employee contracts where they have retro. I don't think you're gonna get retro out of these people because it took so long or whatever, you know? They're gonna fall back on COVID or whatever else they're gonna use and it'll hold up. They hold all the cards. I just don't know. It's like town meeting. We tell people we want to borrow, and they have retained earnings of $500,000. It's almost like the same thing. You want money up front, but you're holding the money in the bank, and they're holding it over your head like a dagger. And I do believe Bill's saying that things have changed in a short period of time. Figure how many people reneged on their cable bills and just let it fall off and said, I don't need it now. How many, you couldn't even probably wonder how many people turn their stuff back in. I just don't know if I'm willing to go against a stacked deck and roll the dice and hire somebody else because I know how this is going to end. And it started back at 8:35 when Mr. Ewing said, we're going to go to federal court. We're going to spend 80 grand. And are you guys going to give us the 80 grand because we dragged our feet and rolled dice that aren't even loaded? The corners are off of them. I appreciate what you guys want, but I can only see this thing turning lousy because we don't hold the cards.
That's the problem.
Well, this is why I'm telling you, it's a waste of time and money. If you really had your hearts in it, maybe you would have dug in harder before and said, hey, where's the time to sit with the contract? But no, things just roll, and they roll, and they roll. Now it's on this board. What are you going to do? You stand up for us. You be the bad guys. Let's not do it. Let's hire a guy from out of town. Easton settled theirs 3 years ago. You don't think things have changed in 3 years? Drastically. Not normal 3 years. You're talking 2 years into COVID and God knows what else. I can't predict the future and know if they're going to go streaming or whatever, or if they're going to have some kind of miraculous wire service that's coming out.
You don't have to predict it, you can just look at the internet. The internet is showing you that cable subscribers are down about 55%. So you
Yeah.
know
So
where it's going.
where do you think you're going to get this money from them? You're gonna ask them to pony it up front, 500,000. You got 500,000 in the bank. They're looking at us like we're idiots.
No,
Well, and that's incorrect, and everything you're saying is the reason why, you're saying that they hold all the cards. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. This board has to issue a license. We're only an advisory committee to the board. You know, at the end of the day, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, or whatever, but we feel that this board will send a message. It's not gonna end up in a lawsuit right now if you guys vote and say, you know, send it back and you know.
I do know this, dealing with the federal
government.
government on a couple of things. When you go to say you're not going to, after all the years you've been dealing with them in fair decisions and contracts, you have to have incidents of documentation showing that where they didn't do what they said they were going to do for us. Did they give you money up front? Sure, they did. They're going to get to the federal court, which the federal court looks on them as good people, and they're going to go, you're just squeezing them, and they're going to win. But you want to vote? Do you want to talk this board into vote? They can vote however they want. I see this coming like a freight train. It's going to run us all over.
Well,
They hold all the cards, the sighting boards, all that stuff.
and they're the ones that drag the feet and drag this contract out.
Can you
So-
prove that? You can't just say it, you have to
Well-
prove that.
Well,
Anybody
that's-
can say they didn't do it. Did you document
Well,
it? Did you?
we're 2.5 years into it. Who
Did
do
you
think-
document your call? Did you say I called on this date in May and said,
Attorney
and
Hewitt-
they ignored you?
Attorney Hewitt has been the one that's been talking to Comcast. He can talk to how long it's been taking to get answers. Joe's been on a lot of the emails almost for the past year, and he knows that every couple of weeks I would follow up with Bill to see where things are, trying to prod them and why this thing's being dragged out. Bill is seeing my emails where I've been very frustrated in how long this has taken. Again, if this was done back in 2019 or early 2020, when as a normal license is done, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. You know, again, I don't think what we started out in asking is unreasonable. Unfortunately, we are at this point, and we, as an advisory board, could not control how long this took out. We only can give the information, and how long it took Comcast to get back to us is on them or whatever. So, you know, like I said, I just totally disagree. We're not at a lawsuit. We're just to the point where we need to let Comcast, I think, know where we're going, you know, what we're happy with and what we're not happy with.
The numbers are already figured out. The money's the money. It's just a matter of how often it takes you to get the money. So if maybe an independent arbitrator can figure out how we're gonna get the 395,000. If they wanna stretch it out for 10 years, there has to be a reason. You know what the reason is. They're not gonna be here. So we're willing to take that money over 5 years or 6 years, and maybe that's the negotiation. I don't know. But to have, to just say, okay, they're bigger than us, let's let them steamroll us, then it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And then-
Madam
Bates.
Chairman, can I ask a question through you to Mr. Hewitt?
Yes,
I just wanted to respond, Scott, to let you know that, in backing up, actually both sides here, I spoke with Comcast at one point, and all I heard was what I hear about everything. No matter what went wrong in anything in the world right now was because of COVID. COVID. You know, I heard all that. People did. They provided some numbers, people during COVID, because people weren't working until the government started paying them to stay home, but they were dropping their subscriptions. Now you're hearing, as a result of COVID, the economy's going down. We're going to lose because of the economy, you know, and they're planning on that as well. So they're seeing their own, and what's been said here, and everyone knows, they're going to lose subscribers. So it's pretty tough to go giving people upfront money when your data shows a decline in subscribership now, and if you just go through the next 4 quarters of every year and look forward, and they use that calculation, they're going to see almost a, you know, their finances are tightened together. So it's going to be pretty difficult for us to go in and say, give us $300,000 when they see their revenue decreasing. So I can understand that, and that may just be where we're at, you know, and I don't know. But I mean, we're sitting here, and it seems like everybody thinks that Comcast is just loaded with cash, and they're just sitting on it. They just don't want to give it out, but
I just wanted
we
to
know they're losing their subscribers already. Never mind. I mean, well, they're losing them too.
But are they losing them to streaming versus to another? They're not
Well,
losing
I'll
them to
tell you, I
another
mean-
service. They're losing them to their own, to switching to streaming.
Right.
So, you know, look at the revenue sheet that we included. They currently are taking in $6.5 million from the base, just for the television portion. That doesn't include the internet and what they're getting for phone service.
Right,
So we know they're taking in over $10 million a year annually from the residents of Stoughton as subscribers. And then
But what have they
you
lost?
also
Do
have
you
the
know that?
Verizons.
Do you know what they've lost?
That corporation, they own more channels and more everything
No, I
else.
understand.
You know,
That's
so
not what
when-
I asked. Do you know what they've
Do they
lost?
break out what their cable services are
But
doing?
Paramount is going to Paramount Plus because Paramount's doing it. Comcast isn't doing it. Disney Plus is Disney. It's not Comcast doing it, right?
But Comcast
Prime.
does have Peacock. They own
Yeah,
Peacock.
no, I understand that,
And
but-
they own Universal Studios. They own Universal
No, I understand that.
channels.
But these other places are going out. It's not Comcast doing it to themselves. People are going away from Comcast. I mean, Paramount, look at Prime, Netflix. I mean, I don't have my own. My own I changed. I don't have any premium channels anymore because it's actually cheaper on some ends in streaming.
Yeah, and most of
So,
those
and
are...
that's what people are going to do, is they're going to do what's best for their pocketbooks.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the things you just mentioned are à la carte type things. They're just one channel, so you're not getting, you know, not everybody's going to go and pay $5 or $6 or $10 to go to grab a Disney or the Paramount and Magnolia Networks and all these ones that are thinking they're going to go get money from everybody and charge everybody. So those are all individuals versus currently you get the bundles.
Right, but it's just saying there's more choices for the subscriber right now, and they're not all with Comcast.
Yeah, so and at the end
They're
of the
gonna
day,
lose money,
it's
too.
not, it's,
Yeah, it's a lot of competition, but I just wanted to give Vice Chair Cavey an opportunity to say something before we go to Vice Chair Cavey. Attorney Hewitt, can you repeat to us, based on your contract draft, what are our benefits? What have you negotiated on behalf of Stoughton for us? So there have been some wins in this contract, and I just want to just have them listed out again so we'll remember. This is not flat, this is an improvement. That was my question. Was it? Okay. Thank you.
The wins are in funding, the improvements are in funding. You would go from 3.5% gross annual revenues per year to 5% gross annual revenues. So that's about a 27% increase in the annual income that the town would realize. If it goes to SMAC, it goes to SMAC. But so that's an increase in the annual revenues. Capital increase. Currently, the capital that was in the prior license was $230,000 over 10 years, average $23,000 a year. Comcast has offered 2 alternatives, either $300,000 flat, which is $30,000 a year, $7,000 more per year times 10, so $70,000 more money that you would get in the new license over 10 years, or the 72 cents per subscriber amount, which works out to somewhere over $415,000 or $16,000 in year 1. And if you assume the subscribership's going to go down, that amount will go down. But I'm sorry, $416,000 over 10 years, so $41,000 in year 1 and then that amount may go down, but that's a lot more than the $23,000 you got per year in capital in the prior license. So the two improvements are in the annual income and in the capital, long-term capital grant that would be coming to the town.
Excellent. Vice Chair Cavey?
Thank you very much. I do have a couple questions that hopefully this will help me understand something a little bit better. But we've had some questions about Comcast has looked into our bank accounts, right? And there's certainly we have every right to look into theirs as well, as to understand their circumstances, and if they're pushing back that they can't do things. It really doesn't help that their annual report, fiscal year end, December 31st, but their annual report shows $3.5 billion in increased revenue, actually net income. So 3.4 billion. Now, this is holistic. It's the entire company, so all of Comcast. But I don't know how they necessarily break this down, but that's a 35% increase from the previous year. Tremendous amount of profits. They released their quarterly filings, their 10Q, only a little while ago. It shows very much the same situation. They are not short on funding by any stretch of the imagination. But my question is related to this: Are the costs localized? Like, do the subscribers in Stoughton pay based on the licenses we have with Comcast, or is it all sort of stirred up and we kind of spread that off across all of Massachusetts or the country or whatever it might be?
It's per license. So each municipality negotiates a different license, different financial terms, and gets different pass-through costs.
Okay.
And so currently, it's the pass-through cost would be 3.3%, $3.30 if you assume a $100 cable bill apart from streaming or telephone. And that is on your bill, too. If you take a look on your bill, you'll see it. It's either franchise fee or it may be called something like access support.
Got it. Okay.
There may be two of them. There may be one for franchise fee and one for access support. I think John said a while ago that Comcast isn't passing through those costs. Well, that was correct about 20 years ago. For a long time, they didn't do it, and nobody could figure out why, and then they started doing it. They're certainly doing it now. They're doing it here. They're doing it everywhere. They don't miss a trick. That's income. They're doing it.
So our local decisions impact our local subscribers' bills. That's kind of my I wasn't sure what in fact that would be. So yeah, so if we drive up the cost locally, then they will lose subscribers locally. It's not something they can necessarily take from a saturated market and move over to here.
Now, the other thing I'd point out is that subscriber numbers can go down, but they also raise their rates. So if you've got a percentage of gross annual revenues, you might lose subscribers and raise rates, and it might be a wash. I mean, you may not be losing all that much money in the future. Who knows? It's not guaranteed that it's going to go one way or the other, and it's not guaranteed on past performance. We simply don't know what the future holds.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, because I was just going to ask which direction.
At some point
would
this
he
evening, am
recommend?
I going to be able to talk to?
Oh, yeah.
Remember me?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Carr.
Where this is a contract and in some contracts in different areas, you get bonds posted. Could we make them post a bond to cover like the money that in the 10-year period? Like if they said, like they think they're going to fall apart in 5 years. So if they fell apart in 5 years, that bond would kick in and they'd have to pay us the 5 that, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. The state statute provides that cable operators are required to post a bond. And this draft license has a bond in it, but it would not be to cover lost funding for access support. It would be to cover damages that might be incurred when the cable company is replacing lines and wires or doing maintenance and they damage private property or public property. The answer is, can we get that? It's a negotiable item, but I can pretty much assure you Comcast would not agree to such a thing, so the answer is no.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, because what's being offered is a per subscriber per month, or per month, it doesn't matter. You can put up a bond, but the rest of the agreement already says that they're not obligated to pay if the subscriber drops off. So, and that's our biggest issue is, you know, the capital and the prescriber language. Everything's changing from the way the current license is written. And it's a big change, you know, and it's a big impact. And I think Selectman Cavey hit the nail on the head is currently the subscribers are paying for this. It's not Comcast. It's not actually coming out of Comcast revenue. Like we said, they're making $6.5 million on the television service in this town. They're not paying for the thing. It's the subscribers that are paying for keeping SMAC up and going and things like that. And you know, it came up earlier as to about others being able to see and use the TVs and see this programming that ain't paying towards it. And we wrestled with that before we launched the website and allowed people to stream. It's like anybody in the country now, if they moved out of town or whatever, they can live anywhere in the, you know, anywhere, and they can actually watch what's going on in Stoughton and, you know, their old hometown, and they're not contributing to it. But we feel it's a service that everybody in the, you know, every resident deserves to have. But, you know, unfortunately, only the ones that are Comcast and Verizon pay for it, you know, for everybody. So, and we, like I said, we wholeheartedly believe it's worth what it is. And I don't know if anybody else finds out, but you know, I always find people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I've seen you on TV, or I've seen this show and that show." So people watch in Stoughton a lot of the programming, and which is great because that's what we're here for, you know. So.
Thank you, Mr. Stagno. Mr. Gito.
Thank you. I think there was discussion about if you have a legitimate reason for saying no, then you might have a case. I'm not suggesting that we go to federal court, but I'm just trying to get back to sort of first principles in terms of why we have SMAC, why we have, we had some of these people coming in to provide cable service with the promise that we would be able to have local programming. And part of the idea of local programming was, as many of us have said around the table here, to make sure that people could hear these meetings and other meetings in town, in other local news. We're losing a lot of that local news now because a lot of newspapers are going out of business. And we have also said that we want to have more citizen participation and citizen understanding. And we may be willing to just forego that. I'm not willing to do that. Not without a fight. And I'm not saying to go to court. I'm saying to negotiate more with a purpose. And I think, like Mr. McCrisky, I'm not willing necessarily to vote tonight, but I would vote. And my vote would be to say, go back to the negotiating table. Maybe what we need to think about is getting some more money up front and giving it out at the other end. If we think that streaming is going to go get more and more of the business, and Comcast does as well, maybe we'd be doing a favor to them if in the last 5 years of the contract, they didn't have to pay as much for us and pay more up front, so that we'd get the opportunity to have a station in a location that we needed. And maybe at the same time, the state may wake up and get with the other half of the country and start to deal with the streaming issue as an amusement and pay taxes on that. And we'd get the money for the streaming later on. That's what I'd do. And by the way, I think on the last page of your contract, you have only 2 places where you're producing shows. I think the high school is another place, isn't it?
We cover the school committee meetings, and actually now it's been expanded to cover the gym has cameras as well as the auditorium.
At the high school.
Yeah.
So
and
you have
actually
more
in the
than
football
two
field cameras.
2 places.
And we have the football field is also covered with
Right.
cameras now too. So, yeah, and then, the Jones School has it.
The last point that I would make is that I think I heard you say that we could know the rates for local service for each of the communities in the state. Am I correct?
Could you rephrase that? I'm not sure.
Let me see if I can rephrase that. Yes. We pay 3.3% in Stoughton, apparently, for local services. Is that correct?
That's the annual operating grant, yes, 3.3% of gross annual revenues passed through to subscribers.
That's passed through to Stoughton. And other communities have other percentages. Is that correct?
Yes.
We should get a list of those.
A list of
the rates, the pass-through rates for each community. At least we'd find out where we stood. Maybe we'd have some sense of whether we were doing really well or not doing really well.
Again, that information is available from DTC. If you want to call up and ask for the pass-through rates for 300 communities in Massachusetts, that information is there.
Isn't that
But
great?
it's not going to help us.
It's not.
It's not going to help us.
Because each community is different.
That's correct.
And so Easton can get, with the money that they have in the bank, they can get a different rate than we can because of the argument. Okay, I guess I hear you, but I'd still go back and start renegotiating.
The money in the bank issue, this is how that plays into negotiations.
Right.
The rules are, we establish our future community cable-related needs. We establish needs.
Well, our need is to make sure that we can continue to provide local programming.
It has to be reduced to a number.
And I think that's the thing that we've been talking about for the last 2 hours and 15 minutes.
But
and I think, I guess from my perspective, I'm persuaded that that we need to think about that a little bit and get a little bit more money up front. But that's only my perspective, and I'm going to stop talking now.
The point that I wanted to make about need was, it might be a different story if we didn't have the money in the bank. But the answer is, from Comcast, you've got to show future need. You say you need $500,000 for Studio Move. You've got $500,000 for Studio Move. That's not a need. And that's why that bank account became an issue. Needs, showing of future needs.
Then maybe the need, pardon me for continuing, but I will, seeing we've been having this long discussion. Maybe the need is more than the 500,000. Maybe the need is for the 500,000 plus having some reserve in the bank to be able to operate continually, and to also pay for the other part of the other $400,000 or $450,000 for equipment that we're going to need over the next few years. So maybe $500,000 isn't the right number. I'd think about that. I'd think about a lot of those things.
The standard of review that a court would look at, and the definition of what it is we're supposed to be presenting to Comcast is the following. We're supposed to present to them our future community cable-related needs, our reasonable future community cable-related needs, considering the cost. If Comcast were to take us into court, they would try to make a demonstration that they have offered our future, they have met reasonable future community cable-related needs, considering the cost. The word reasonable is one heck of a big legal mush word. And that's part of the problem. It's the way the statute is worded. That's why we could say, yeah, we need $10 million, Comcast, and Comcast would be able to say, that's not reasonable considering the cost. The cost is a pass-through cost to subscribers. That would require us to pass additional rates through the subscribers of $15 a month or something like that. So the problem is the wording in the Cable Act and what lawyers call the standard of review. And it's not just need. I've said need over the course of the evening, but what it is reasonable future community cable-related needs considering the cost. There's a lot of mush words in there that allow Comcast and other cable companies to wiggle out of saying, when we say we need $10 million, they say it's not reasonable and it's not considering the cost. That's the problem.
Anything else, Mr. Gito?
I'm not exactly sure how to respond to that.
Yeah,
All I'm trying to do is say we have a primary need to be able to deliver local programming. And we may be having a problem, anticipating that problem, anticipating the fact that we have money in the bank because we want to make sure that we'd be able to do the things we need to do. And then we may need more money in the bank than we thought. And there's a lot of mush words in there. And it all depends on where you start and whether or not we have a negotiation at all. Or if we're just getting something shoved down our throats. And I'm just giving you some thoughts on dealing with the streaming issue in a different way, and dealing with the other part in a different way. And I don't know whether that's been thought about. In saying, I think I'll just quit.
Yes, our cable, it's not a public safety issue, but it is a necessary service issue. So I ask my fellow board members, do you need any additional information, and what is the motion for tonight? Whether it is to negotiate further on the rate, whether it is just to have some more time to think about what we have learned tonight. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. McCrisky.
I'm not ready to make a motion, but would ask the board's indulgence if I could set up a phone conversation with Mr. Hewig and possibly with Comcast. Take some bullet points, John, from you, what you would like in that phone conversation, so that I can hear it from Comcast myself, because I haven't heard that. It's just that, like you, talking with Bill and so forth. So if you want to get me an email with some notes in that, I can discuss that with Bill, see if we can get them on the phone one last time, come back to this board and say that I've spoken with them, and this is the message. All right, because I am concerned that, you know, and I'm just going to say it, is that it almost seems like we're second-guessing Mr. Hewig, and he's been doing this for a long time. But, you know, when you have counsel, and I'm not saying it just, you know, not anybody in particular, but it just seems like the mood of it is. And what I'd like to be able to do is be able to say that, you know, I went over these concerns, brought these concerns up, asked them specifically the questions you want me to ask them, John, with Bill on that, and then be able to get that answer directly. You know, and who knows, if they, you know, maybe just that phone call, maybe it stirs them to something, we don't know. You know, but, and then, you know, I can provide an update at the next meeting.
Is everyone in agreement? I see affirmative head nods. I'm in agreement. Vice Chair?
And anybody's thoughts on an email? You know, we can't
Mr.
discuss it.
Gito, are you in agreement with this direction?
Maybe it'd be good if you and John got on the,
Well, I'd rather just handle it on our board right now.
okay?
But that's why I said, John sends me an email, you can copy everybody so they all know what you've asked me, and I'll get those answers as well, so that when we come back the next time, we'll have those answers.
Thank you.
And I just to interject, so if there's no vote or whatever, and if Mr. McCrisky could just have some direction from the board, and so he has the authority to say that, you know, the board isn't ready to agree to this contract as it's being proposed, I think is more leverage than just going and having a conversation with them. My concern would be is it's going to end up being the same answer unless this board is sending a message saying, look, we need a better agreement than so much per subscriber per month over 10 years, you know, or even at the $300,000 that they offered us over 10 years doesn't work out. As we said, you know, they're asking us now to pay $30,000. They want that in one lump sum. So if we get $30,000 a year, you know, over the 10 years, that first $30,000 goes out the window. We have nothing year
Well,
one.
that's why I've asked you, send me an email,
So,
put
you know,
everything in your position, because what I'm looking to do is go into this I mean, I haven't been actively involved with the negotiations. You've had more interaction with Mr. Hewig than I have. I've just been getting emails, you know, the same way. So, I mean, you know that because I'm not responding to emails that have taken place between you and Mr. Hewig. So you've got more interaction in this process than I have. I just wanted to be kept up to date.
Yeah, I just
I
want.
feel I have. I'm not saying that I
Yeah.
haven't. But again, that's why I'm saying is I want you to give me an email, copy the rest of the board.
Yep.
You know, and that's the message, you know, that I have no problem saying, listen, we're just coming back. This is what, you know, what the board was concerned with. We had a better than 2 hour and a half conversation about this, and there's some questions by the board. You know, so give me your email, give me what you want in it, you know, and I would encourage my colleagues, fire me off an email, Scott, if you want to call me on the phone, you know, and whatever, you know, people have for thoughts here, I'll jot it down, we'll get on a conference call and see what we can do.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm
and then
just
we'll come
trying-
back to know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I'm just trying to empower you to be able, to, when you're on a phone call with them, to say.
Believe me, I know what
you know,
to say.
Understand,
this
Mr.
board,
Yeah.
Mr.
you know,
Stagno.
You have the support of the board, you know, to say that, you know what, we're not satisfied with the.
John,
the
just
0.7.
one second. I
Enough.
think,
Mr. McCrisky put himself out there. He's going to do it with Mr. Ewing. I don't think we have to bring a hammer to the table. Joe's been doing this in different areas before. I've done things different. I think he knows what has to be done. Nobody on the board has said, Joe, don't do it. He's going to do it. Send him the information. This discussion is over. It's beating a dog in circles. He's going to do what you asked. He's going to try to get some more. Give him the information on your emails that he asked for, and this is over. I don't want anybody saying, be hard, Joe, be tough. He's going to get what we can get. And then when he comes back, this guy's going to tell us the same thing that he said. They're not going to give us any more. You just don't get it. And I'm not being thick-headed or anything, you just don't get it. There's money in the bank that you did a great job running the place, and they're penalizing us for it. You're not going to get anything more out of them. You watch.
Oh, don't be surprised, you never know. I've been accused of being pretty tough, you know, so, I mean, who knows?
Whatever.
No,
So if,
like I said,
so
that's
thank
good.
you very much for your attendance and discussion tonight. And if there are no further issues that you want to bring to the table, new issues that is, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Good
Thank
night,
you, everybody.
everyone.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.